I've been collecting playing cards since I'm like 10. I've got like 83 right now. Look at all those cards. I just turned 18 and I think it's time for me to do my biggest and dream project. Make my own playing cards. That's when I started gathering ideas to understand which deck I wanted to create, which theme I wanted to have. I wanted something which resonates to who I am and my values. I also looked for playing cards which I could inspire myself from. For example, this one by Theory 11, Monarchs. It is arguably seen as the most exquisite playing cards ever produced. I mean, just look at those cards. That's when I found the idea of the deck. I was going to make one on time, or more exactly, on Kairos. But what is Kairos? Kairos is a philosophical concept in Greek god which represents the appropriate time, the time to act and not to miss. Basically, it's the idea to say there's a right time for every action. And right now, it's the time to make my own playing cards. At this point, I was extremely excited. Having the idea of the deck made already the deck a bit real. And so now, I had to start planning the entire project. I was going to need, I got the list right here, a designer, an engineer for the box mechanism, a manufacturer, a printer, a fulfillment company for shipping, and build visibility on social media for my deck, which is what I'm doing right now. Making that list made me realize how big the project was going to be. It will be 5 months of work. It was not going to be like an easy walk through the woods. It was more going to be like a long and rough journey climbing a mountain. That's when I started contacting printers and fulfillment companies to start planning the project and understand how much money I would need to print the cards, right? I was going to need $10,000 to realize my dream project. I don't have that much money, but I have a plan. I will have to use crowdfunding on Kickstarter to make my project real, which means to sell 10,000 worth of my future decks to be able to manufacture those playing cards. This really hit me hard, as I realized that if I did not manage to collect $10,000, my project won't come to life. A huge part of my project was the designer. Unfortunately, I worked with someone in the previous project about sliders called Pascal Data, a talented and awesome guy. After detailing the entire deck and sending it to Pascal, I received the first draft. I wasn't fully convinced, but it was very promising. Succeeded a full week of work, went from that to that. Pascal sent me tons of color possibilities, and we ended up choosing this blue one. However, I realized that the deck we were going for was not going to stand against any of our usual decks. It was not good enough. I mean, just look at this design. How exquisite it looks. When I realized this and I told it to Pascal, it was really a big hit for both of us. The design was fine, but it was not good enough and I couldn't let the main element of the deck, the back of the cards, not be outstanding. And so, we had to start everything over again. The goal was to make something more detailed and more refined while still keeping the same outlines as the previous back. We gave ourselves 2 weeks to redesign the back of the cards. After tons of modification, we arrived to this. I was finally convinced with the design. So let me detail what we got here. At the middle, we have an hourglass which is at equilibrium to represent the right time, Kairos. At both hands, there is a clock, and the hand clock will move just like a flipbook when you flourish the cards. The clock hand only has one indicator, an ace of spade, to represent the right time, again Kairos. The sort of waves on the sides alludes to flow of time. There's a bunch of other meanings and Easter eggs you can find out, but I will detail everything in the Kickstarter campaign. We could finally move on to the next steps. The aces. First draft of the Ace of Heart, which I received from Pascal, looked a bit like a dog, so we had to rework that. It was pretty funny. What we ended to go for at the end though was great. On each suit, there's a small reference to the back design, making everything feel like one. Just like if all the suits were forming the back design. It is my first project, and at the start, I wanted to make a simple top box, as it will be easier to manufacture. However, I realized that if I wanted my deck to succeed, I should make something way bigger and way more interesting. I was going to make a custom box. I wanted to make a mix between the eye-catching Helios Sun playing cards, which have a great mechanism, and the casual box of the touch playing cards. Look, it's very simple, but when you open it, the cards are pushed outside the deck. I started making tons of prototype ideas. I've made multiple, but I've chosen this one. Now I just had to realize this box out of paper to make a first prototype. After a bit of work, I finished with these. Basically, it's the first prototype of the deck, and you open it that way, and once it should like stay open like this, and I find it pretty interesting looking and kind of majestic. It might look simple, but it really is the opposite. Making everything so that it lasts in time, so that it is easy enough to open, but still a little stiff. And that It is easy enough to build, but to reproduce it on 2,000 decks is not an easy task. Here I have an idea, but to invent perfectly and manufacture this box, I'm gonna use a Belgian company which specializes in paper boxes. I think this is gonna take me 3 more months to realize the project, then 1 month for the Kickstarter, and then the clients will receive their decks 2 months later. But for that project to become real, I'm gonna need $10,000. I mean, like, how am I going to do that? And so that's my dream project. So please consider subscribing to follow my journey.